Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of The Fishing Teacher, and much appreciated you guys checking today's video out. And today we're going to continue our series on sort of some environmental conditions, and we're going to be talking about water temperature, how water temperature affects fish in correlation with some other stuff, sort of just give you a foundation of it. So if you followed some of the videos I've done here recently, we're talking a lot of stuff about like water temperature, water clarity, current, all the environmental factors that change. And water temperature is a huge one, because if you guys have watched many of my videos on the other channel, you know I talk a lot about water clarity and water temperature in correlation with each other. And again, we'll be covering all this in detail as far as the nuances, but I sort of wanted to give you a basic foundation of understanding how water temperature affects fish. So first thing you have to remember is fish are cold-blooded. So the metabolism rate that they have and their general level of activity is directly correlated to the water temperature to some extent. Now, they're not like snakes or turtles. I mean, snakes or turtles get pretty dormant when it gets cold out, but a fish will feed all winter long. They'll feed even if the lake's frozen over on the top. So they, for some reason, that they're not quite as affected by the water temperature drops as other cold-blooded creatures are. And the more we learn about fishing, the more we understand that. It used to be like people never fished in the wintertime because they thought fish were just inactive because of cold water. But in reality, winter is probably a better time to fish than like the fall time of the year as far as catching fish. So here's some basic things to realize about water temperature as far as, you know, how to approach it and all this. A lot of it has to do with the water temperature in relationship to the season you're in. Because, for example, if you have 50-degree water temperature in March, it's completely different than having 50-degree water temperature, say, in late November, in the fall time of the year, based upon the sort of the seasonal movements and pattern of the fish. For example, if it's 50 degrees in March, the fish are in the pre-spawn stage, which means they're full of eggs. They're getting ready to move up shallow to spawn, you know, when it warms up a little bit more. And if it's 50 degrees in the fall time of the year, spawning's not on their mind. They're just wanting to feed up before it gets too cold for winter. So it's all relative to that. So for the most part, just sort of a basic foundation as far as water temperature, you really need to let the water temperature dictate the techniques that you fish. So what I'm saying by that is, like, in general, the warmer the water, the more that a faster moving lure will work, and the colder the water, the more that you want to slow it down, and then everything else is sort of in between. So let's say, for example, it's summertime and the water's pretty hot. One of the best ways to catch them in the summertime when the water's hot is to fish a crankbait and reel it in very fast. Like, say, for example, if you're fishing around stumps or maybe some lay down trees in the water, you can throw a crankbait past that piece of cover and reel it pretty fast next to it, and you can create a reaction strike by the speed of that lure. Because if the water is really warm, the bass, their metabolisms are faster, they react more to instinct and reaction strikes, and therefore, you know, a faster retrieve is better. But on the flip side of the coin, say you're fishing water temperatures of 45 degrees, and you're fishing maybe a jerk bait or something like that, a lot of times you have to barely move that. You have to throw it out there and work it down and stop it and let it just sit there for a little bit, or barely move it, because the bass's metabolisms are pretty cold. So in the wintertime when it's cold, it's the direct opposite. You want to use slow lures, slow moving lures. And everything else is dependent upon the degree of which the water temperature increases or decreases. Now, let's say, for example, if you're fishing, say, a jerkbait really slow when the water temperature is 45 degrees. When the water temperature reaches 55 degrees, the metabolisms pick up and other techniques work a little bit better. Say, for example, you can start catching some fish by, you know, fishing a spinnerbait at a medium retrieve. And then as the water temperatures, say, get closer to 70 degrees, sometimes the fish will get even more aggressive and they'll chase and hit a topwater lure or something like a soft plastic stick bait like a fluke. So water temperatures are really key in determining the mood, determining the level of aggressiveness and how much a bass or a fish will chase a lure. Now, that's the foundation of the water temperature, but it's almost impossible to talk about water temperature unless you bring in water clarity into the mix too, because water clarity and water temperature, they go hand in hand, and you can't really determine like where you want to fish and the techniques you want to fish unless you know the combination of the water clarity and the water temperature. But overall, I just sort of wanted to give you guys a foundation. If you're not familiar with what water temperature does to fish, that's sort of a general, starting point for it. And we'll move forward in later videos and get into a lot more detail about other factors determine it. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. Much appreciated. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button, I invite everybody to do that. We'll talk later.